Welcome everyone to another community meeting for OpenFGA. This one is special, but hold your horses. You'll know why in a bit. You probably know why, but a quick overview of the agenda. We're intros. We're gonna go with what shipped, some demos, like of OpenFGA in the wild, community news, QA at the end. The team is forever growing. You'll see a lot of new faces. We did say hello to Anurag last meeting. Saad a few meetings before that, and today just say hello to Jonathan or Daniel, and he's in this call. So welcome to the team. So and maybe that's a good segue. Jonathan, do you want to introduce yourself before we ask everyone else to introduce themselves?
Yeah, for sure. So great to be here. My name's Daniel Jonathan, so sometimes you see Daniel, sometimes you see Jonathan. So I'll try and stick with Jonathan. Yeah, really great to be here. It's fun so far. Everyone's really amazing, and so I'm excited to contribute and learn from the community. And yeah, overall, just happy to be a part of this. So nice to meet you guys.
We're happy to have you join us too. Anurag, also feel free. I know you introduced yourself last time, and Saad also.
Yeah. Hi, folks. So it's been like slightly more than a month now. I'm here and I've been enjoying it. I was already sort of a contributor before I like joined, but now it's fun to work on the sort of roadmap stuff and like bigger pieces. So yeah, it's been fun.
Again, welcome to the team. And it's nice also to have people who know about FGA and contribute to FGA even before becoming part of it. Like that made for one of the easiest interviews. Like we didn't have to like, do you know what OpenFGA is? Yes, I already contributed. All right, we see your code done. So it was pretty nice. Anyone else would like to introduce themselves?
I can go real quick. I'm Sri. I work for Headspace. We're in the process of, I work with Jeremy here, and we're in the process of adopting OpenFGA for many of our use cases. Good to meet you all. I'm based out of Austin, Texas.
Good to meet you. Yeah, we're excited to what you and Jeremy have to say today. All right. Gonna leave 10 more seconds for anyone. Going once, going twice, gone. All right. This is why, I mean, other than, of course, we're going to have Jeremy talking about how OpenFGA and Headspace. Another reason this is our first community meeting after we made CNCF Incubation. Honestly, thank you for everyone. Of course, thanks you to Pauline, Gerline, Joa, Nate, and Andrew for their help getting to this milestone, but thank you to everyone else, like from the community, for everyone filing bugs, feature requests, asking us questions on CNCF forum back when we had Discord, all of that, or writing articles about OpenFGA, sharing up OpenFGA, or sending it to your peers and about like why they should try this project, why it changes everything. It was a long way to get here, but also in a not that much of a long way. It only a few like this was only a few years in a way, but it was a big milestone for us. Sandbox was a big milestone, but incubation kind of would not be possible if we did not see the community adoption and the community trust in this project. And that is built not just by the team or even us, the contributors here, the maintainers here. It needed that community to take kind of an ownership and interest and see a use and have it tackle their use cases. So thank you for everyone who was part of this. I do have an ask from Andres to tell you and ask you that this is only a partial step. We want graduation next, so expect us to start demanding that. But for now, we'll be happy with this. We'll celebrate for a bit, and maybe next month we'll start thinking about graduation. But honestly, really, thanks a lot for being with us through this journey and for helping us on this journey. And hopefully we'll be on the journey together for longer and more. Just shipped. This was a very productive kind of month. So you'll see a lot of releases, not huge intensive releases. But some things we finally got covered, especially talking about the SDKs. But some things to highlight, just on the OpenFGA front, we had a bunch of releases. Some of them small, but two of the biggest things to keep in mind, we did enable a query planner. This is gonna evolve more as time goes, but the idea is, in many cases, choosing what or how to evaluate, the best method for evaluation doesn't work the same way for everyone. So something that would be fast for a particular model and particular tuples may not be fast for a different model and a different tuples. So we're starting in the idea of starting a planner, and like you might have different resolution methods based on what your model looks like and what your tuples look like. Of course, trying to get you to a better, a faster check response, faster list objects. You've seen us so far struggle. We try to get, we usually get a lot of benefits for a lot of people, but then someone finds something getting slower. So trying to satisfy every use case is hard with a single plan. So trying to build strategies around this is where we're headed. And of course, thank you a lot to the team who have been working on this for a while. The other one is also like basically for the benefit of performance. PGX, we're using, this is a bit internal, but we're using pgxpool over the database SQL. The main thing you'll notice is the metrics will change. So if you're using the Prometheus metrics, just do note they're going to change. They did change as you upgrade. We also released a bunch of Helm charts. Most of them are just bumping the OpenFGA version. But thank you to the community member who added OCI support to our Helm chart. So that's released. So thanks a lot. On the CLI front, we had a bunch of releases also. We bumped OpenFGA to a certain extent, but it comes with fixes to retries. Thank you to Siddhant, another maintainer. He's not with us right now, but he's not on the meeting, but he added support for page size when doing tuple reads. And we also added support for write conflict options that the server supported in 1.10. Some of you might have noticed an issue in our GitHub actions due to a bug in our CLI. Thanks to Ewan who promptly fixed it and pushed out the release. But again, a community member helped by giving us the ability to specify a version of the CLI. So the next time this happens, you're not affected if you can pin the CLI version without waiting for us to roll out a release. That's not all. There's also the SDKs. I'm not going to go through all of them because most of them are the same. Expect support for write options and support for better support for retries. Retries has been a long journey with us because SDKs supported retries in one form or another, but we finally stabilized on a methodology like that across the SDKs that's consistent about how we're going to support retry, and it's mostly about the retry after dropping support for things like the rate limit reset. So it's the retry after header, and if that's not available, we will do an exponential retries. That's available right now in all our SDKs. And thank you to all the folks here and in the community who helped with that. I'll talk a bit. There's a bit to talk about some changes in the SDKs for the on the contributing front that I'll leave to after Jeremy. But now let's talk about OpenFGA in action, and one of which is in Headspace. Jeremy, I'll give it to you.
Thank you, thank you. All right, let me share my screen. Everyone see the slides? Great. Okay, so my name's Jeremy. I'm a principal engineer at Headspace. I've been there for a little over 4 years now. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Headspace and one of our new products and why we chose to use OpenFGA to secure that, and why our existing method wasn't suitable. How our specific architecture works around OpenFGA, and mistakes we made along the way and how we address them. So a little bit about Headspace. So we are an all-in-one mental health app. Everything from guided meditation all the way to more clinical care and everything in between. We cover 90 million lives. So scale with any kind of authorization system is important. And so, being able to have millions upon millions of tuples supported in OpenFGA is great. 105 million app downloads total. The specific product that we chose to start our OpenFGA integration with is called EB. So this is our empathetic AI tool. Definitely not meant to replace humans. This is more of a first step along that journey. So we launched it last year with 6 million total messages so far, and it's a regional rollout, which is important in one of the reasons why we chose to use OpenFGA. And we needed to have a very specific set of use cases covered for this. Enterprise users of Headspace wanted to be able to opt out of this. We needed to enable specific support based on region and language and be able to update that quickly and also block it quickly. Legislation around AI tools is constantly changing, so we needed to be very responsive to that. And if we needed to re-architect our way of authorizing access to EB, we wanted to be able to do that clearly and in a way that was testable. So on the screen right now is our old way of securing EB. So in the top left, you can see we have the mobile apps, and EB is available in a set of tabs and also dedicated buttons. And those buttons and tabs were hidden and shown conditionally based off of our feature flagging tool. And this was a mistaken use of a feature flag tool because we didn't have anything better at the time. The ability to do language and country, subscriber, manual overrides, and organizations, and composing all of that together. That was the only tool that we had that was that flexible at the time. And that's all client side. Meanwhile, the server side had to duplicate those checks. And that wasn't in sync across our various systems, whether it's server-driven UI or the actual EB services themselves. So conditional calls duplicated throughout the stack and multiple points of decision. The new architecture is much more clear and straightforward. So the mobile apps simply request from SDUI or from EB itself, can I show these things? Do you have access to this? And both of them reach out to OpenFGA. taking the user's information and context, and we have a wrapper API around it. The services aren't communicating with OpenFGA directly, and I'll get into why we chose that a little bit later. So this is a lot more straightforward, a lot more easy to test. It's all in sync. And if we need to make a change, such as adding or removing support for a country or a state or something like that, it's universal across the app and instantaneous, which is fantastic. So the actual rules for accessing EB are the user must be assigned it. They must be accessing it from a supported country. They must be using a supported language, and they are not a part of a blocked organization. So 4 specific checks. And the way that we have that outlined in OpenFGA, and I'm rudimentary showing the graph structure here, is that users in pink are related to EB, they're assigned EB, or they are assigned an org that blocks EB. And then EB itself is related to a set of languages and countries. Also, to make it clear here, we do have family plans in Headspace, so that's why the dependent inherits things from their primary. And the way that we lay that check out in our wrapper API is using the batch check API. So we actually issue 4 checks in parallel. So we make sure that the user is assigned, that the country code that's a part of the request matches the language, and then also the blocked. And then just very simple Boolean logic. The user has access to EB if they are allowed and they are not blocked. It's not a single traversal through the graph, but it is a single API request, and it's all encapsulated in the wrapper API. So that's not how we originally launched it. The original way that we launched it was a single check, and we didn't have the wrapper API. We exposed the OpenFGA syntax and stuff to internal consumers. And this had a lot of wrinkles that we very quickly worked through. So the first is that imposing a single check per entitlement pushed a lot of the complexity into the graph, which resulted in some poor performance that I'll get into. And also exposing the OpenFGA syntax to our internal consumers meant that they had to learn this tool to a much deeper degree than we as a platform team would want. Not really scalable in the human sense. And it also meant that there was a tight coupling between our authorization schema and all of the integration points in the code base. So let's say that we needed to add state, like US state, to the EB check. We would have to update all of the consumers the way that they're writing the queries before actually launching it in the authorization model. So this wasn't scalable, and the way that we solved it was with the wrapper API, we have various entitlements such as EB as just string enum and then a grab bag of context. And this context is actually through HTTP headers, but I wrote it literally here. And this was very scalable, and we were able to successfully have other teams integrate with our platform in a very easy way, which is fantastic, and that's exactly what we wanted as a platform team. So one thing that, if I was going a little too quickly, I'll just emphasize it here. The user is not the user. And that's because OpenFGA operates as a directed graph internally. And in order to get good performance on the way that we decided to structure our authorization model, we needed to flip that. And this is a point of friction internally. So to correctly block EB on users, the user is actually ebb. And really like it should be subject instead of object. We debated rewriting this internally with our APIs, but we found that that was confusing to people who did want to invest in learning OpenFGA. And then they would look at the documentation for OpenFGA and see user and so we decided to go away from the rewrite. But it still is an occasional point of friction where by default people will always make the user the user. And that stuff gets sussed out into in tests. So no production bugs have been shipped with that yet, knock on wood, but it is an interesting point of friction. So I did want to go a little bit in depth on the original query that we had for ebb and why that wasn't working. So again, now we broke it out into multiple parallel checks. But our initial attempt was a single check. And so we had to go from feature to user, and we had to express not just the language checks and the country checks, but also the organization blocked. And when we did this, it ended up taking 10 to 15 seconds to resolve the check once we added the organizations. So this is the first thing that we launched, and we were still backfilling all of the data. And so this query was working really well until we added the organizations, of which we support several thousand. And we hadn't imported the organization members yet, just the organizations. And we immediately had to pause and rethink about how we were working with the queries. And so that has to do with the but not blocked syntax in the authorization model. So when we went from feature to user, that was pretty much a straight line. We did have a with context conditional that checked the country and the language with the binding to user. And that's another thing that we broke out. But just the but not blocked with all of the organizations, even with no members, that just took 10 to 15 seconds to resolve. So the way that it's structured now is a lot easier to understand, even though it's 4 separate pieces. But the interesting thing is that it goes from feature to user, from feature to language, from feature to country code. But then for the organization check, it goes from user to feature. And again, that's because of the directed graph, but it becomes a straight line, and it only becomes at most 4 hops or 3 hops from user to organization. And then if that's part of a hierarchical organization, then to that parent, and then to the blocked feature. So this is very performant in production. We're seeing about 10 to 15 milliseconds end to end. So that's like with our internal networking and with the wrapper API and things like that. So this is fantastic and more than meets our needs, which is great. The other thing, so when we had to go and we had to basically invert our query, we decided to go ahead and write all of our tuples in both directions. So for that hierarchical organization relationship, we write organization A is the parent of organization B, and then we also write organization B is the child of organization A. And we're doing that even though we're not necessarily traversing the graph in the other direction yet, but so that if we need to, we don't need to backfill a bunch of data. So it's a little bit more than to maintain, and it does double our storage, but that's okay because storage is not our bottleneck. We want the flexibility to rewrite those queries in the future without having to do any sort of large backfill. And that's all I got. So yeah, we're hiring, headspace.com/join us if this interests you or anything in the mental health and wellness space. I can do a little bit more in the system design, but also happy to answer any questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. This is amazing. Yeah. I would love to go to system design, but I do have a bunch of questions actually for just the stuff you've already said, and I'll leave it to see if I'll let other folks also ask if they do. Just want to share some things because we like this sort of, I want to say innovation, because there are some decisions you make that ultimately influence the project. Like it would be nice if they were built into OpenFGA itself. And some of the things we've ideated on, even though we're honestly they're nowhere near agreed/ready for release, but are kind of, I feel, address some of the things you mentioned. Partially, like I was thinking of initially the batch check. At some point, we were thinking about something like like having composable checks, so that you can tell us, give us a bunch of checks and what the relation between all of them. It won't help a lot here, but one thing it would help is I guess the auditability / not having this in your app code. Surprisingly, we haven't seen a lot of people asking for that, but I wonder if because just a lot of people are doing it and just staying silent. But yeah, that's like a great example of how flexible OpenFGA is in a good and bad way. It's definitely not as flexible. Like it has some enforcement, but it's flexible in terms of you can solve so many different problems in so many different ways, and there's never really a correct answer. Especially that answer that's what works at the beginning is not the same one that works after you scale or after you change something. So you will have to constantly find what works for you as you go on. So I liked here, and like I had a question about this. Are you right? You mentioned the wrapper API. So are you writing the logic for this in the wrapper or in the clients calling the wrapper API? The logic around the like how the batch check should perform, like what's the like but not blocked and all of these. So are you exposing something
So
simpler to your clients?
this is what it looks like from the consumer's point of view.
Okay.
So we have at this point in time, we only have this broad concept of entitlements, but we may extend this in the future to other like high-level domain things. So from the client's perspective, they go to our wrapper API and they say, does this user have access to ebb, or does this user have access to some other feature? It's really just a string. And then here's the grab bag of context for you to make that decision. And that's it. So like briefly looking at the system architecture piece. So yeah, on the orange box here on the right, authorization services, we have the wrapper API. And the check handler is what the clients request through. And it's that very high level thing. And then that makes all the composite queries. So ebb's the most complicated one, which is good that we started with that because everything else was a lot more simple than that. And then the tuples get written either through like synchronous requests or through our event bus. And there's a very clear wall here between these things.
Just around the event bus, and how are you handling things like a tuple being invalid, or I don't know, if you're using the recently rolled out feature where around duplicate tuples, or like if a tuple already exists and you try to write it, or or just like failure, for example, a tuple is malformed for one reason or another, or you generally don't have those because of certain tests you have in your system?
Yeah. So we don't have any because of really thorough integration tests, which is great. The fact that we can test the authorization model was a huge reason why we picked OpenFGA over different tools. So we've never had, knock on wood, any issues with tuples failing to write because of invalid syntax or anything like that. For the duplication, we did this past week upgrade the SDKs to use the conflict resolution. Before that, we were just stringly checking the error code. So it's nice to have like a proper status code for that, which is a great change.
That's lovely feedback, because we ourselves were wondering, because we wanted to make checking the error code simpler for you on the SDKs, and now we're wondering if that's still needed, considering that use case is solved by the conflict options. But if you still find yourself looking at the error codes, error messages specifically, and yeah, get feedback about that, because part of it is we would like to try as much as possible to simplify error messages, starting from the SDKs, but ultimately, of course, we want to go all the way to the API.
So there is one error that I can make a GitHub issue for you if you want later. So with the introduction of the, I think it was 1.10 that introduced the conflict resolution options, we do see a much more clear error now when two transactions are attempting to write the same tuple, and the second transaction will fail instead of like be blocked. So we do still inspect that error and then retry the request then. So it's slightly different than the failure case before. But that hasn't been an issue or blocking anything for us. We just retry the request and it's fine. That typically happens for us when like in our eventing system, if the same event is being processed concurrently, or two different events are writing the same tuple, and it's fine if they are the same, but it's just because of the high concurrency that it causes an issue.
That leads me to think if we should allow you to configure the error codes we retry over, because the SDK is already trying on 500s and 429s. There's no reason it shouldn't retry on 409s, assuming you're opting into that without you having to manually do that. But yeah, we'll take it up.
Jeremy, I had a question for you. Sorry, I was want to dig into the errors. So, you know, we've been looking at what's it, kind of longer term, where we'd create very explicit and specific error codes and add like a errors like block, and then be able to, so that way like HTTP status code wouldn't be the only thing that like go you'd be able to explicitly know what happened from a set of error codes. But of course there's like be breaking changes. Is that something that, you know, would be worth it to you, like to make the break, like to be lockstep with the breaking change to be able to handle the errors better? Or is it like are you at a point where it's like, okay, this is like sufficient and it's like, you know, good enough? Like we're trying to figure out like how far we go.
I don't have a strong opinion either way. I like the more explicit error codes, and being able to change behavior, but if it would be like undue effort to make that happen, I think that's fine. Um, I think it's really only the conflict thing that we've ever really seen. Um, Occasionally in the lower environments, never in production, we'll see like a connection closed thing, and I think that's more of just the low traffic and PostgreSQL trying to use a connection that's like expired or something, because we've never seen that in prod. So yeah, I don't have a strong opinion.
I also wonder for the connection closed how recent that is, because part of the retry logic, or initially we were not retrying on, like we were accidentally only listing for 500 explicitly, which is different from connection, like a connection editor or like no network. So those were recently added across the SDK. So I don't know how recent you were having those issues. So now I think most of the SDKs should automatically retry on that.
We've seen that since the very beginning. So it wouldn't have been something with 1.10.
No,
but yeah.
mean SDKs wise, if it's a recent SDK, you shouldn't still see that because the SDK should retry now.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll keep an eye out for it, and I'll reach out if we still see it.
Before we continue, just Steven and then Osman have some questions. So just Steven is asking, not sure if I missed it, but what are you using the block list for?
Yeah, good question. So there's two variants of the block list. So if I go back to the graph, so organizations tend to be very cautious with what they allow their employees to access and things like that. Just in general, not like a Headspace thing. And so we allow organizations to prevent their employees from accessing ed if that's not something that they agree with. So that's one part of the block list. The other one is actually a recent update that's not on this graph. We also have the ability to block ebb on individual users if like there was some kind of fraud or abuse detection, whether it's like more like the types of things that they're sending, like if they're trying to like break out of some sort of sandbox or for anything in that way. And the really great thing about that is that we didn't have to update our queries or anything. We just had to update the authorization model to allow a blocked relationship on a user, and the queries just work, which is fantastic. So nothing in what you're seeing on the screen right now had to change, just the way that we would assign a blocked relationship directly on a user. Oh, was there another question? Sorry, I haven't had the chat open, which that's my bad.
The other question is Osman has his hand raised, so I'll leave it to him to ask.
Yeah, hi everyone. I have a not super technical question. It's mostly related to, I think you mentioned that you work in a platform team. So I'm really curious about how do you collaborate with the feature teams in order to evolve the authorization model? Like, are you the gatekeepers? Are you the only ones in platform teams that can evolve the authorization model? For example, if a feature team has a feature that impacts the authorization model, do they have to come to you, or did you spread the knowledge of OpenFGA throughout the whole organization and taught everybody how to do OpenFGA authorization?
Good question. So no, we are not the gatekeepers. At Headspace, we don't do that, period, for anything. Anybody is capable of contributing to any repo or any domain if they want to. Of course, we have like set approvers for people that are domain experts. And so for me on the platform team, that would be OpenFGA. So I see all of the PRs that come in and I approve all of them and I offer advice. But I'm not the gatekeeper in that sense that they have to, you know, throw a Jira ticket over the wall or anything like that. Basically what I've mostly been doing over the past couple of months is this, like presenting internally, and this is like a more redacted set of slides than what I've been doing internally. And so Tree can talk about how I haven't been actually writing code because I've been doing this mostly for the past couple of months. So yeah, there's that. And yeah, I'm happy to do it because it's cool and it is giving everybody a much more powerful tool to use internally to solve things, which I like.
Super nice. Thank you so much. One more question.
Sure.
How do you manage the CI/CD pipeline for the model? And also, do you have like other environments like staging that can be used by everybody? And And how do you also manage the CI/CD regarding the authorization model in those environments?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So we use the Terraform provider to for all of our authorization models. And we also have a set of static tuples, which I didn't talk about here. But there are some concepts in our system that are out of scope of the ebb talk, where it doesn't make sense to have that live ephemerally in OpenFGA. We want to keep track of it. Actually, we do use that for ebb some. So ebb being allowed in English or ebb being allowed in the United States, we define those in Terraform. So that way they exist in all of the environments. And if somebody from like the legal team wants to block ebb in California or something like that, then they can just go in and edit that Terraform file and it'll be done. So we use Terraform for static tuples as well as the authorization model, and then CI/CD for any updates to the OpenFGA configuration or version. And then all of that goes through a set of integration tests along with the wrapper API. And one thing that we do that may be atypical is that we hide completely from consumers the authorization model version. We're basically always using the latest, and the application is just always querying Terraform state essentially for what the latest version is to use. So that way we're always progressing forward, and that requires us to make sure that the authorization model changes are forwards and backwards compatible in the same way that like normal database migrations should be. But it saves a lot of headache where somebody could be issuing a query or something where it would resolve in one way for one authorization model and not for another. I think that's everything. Yeah.
Just one more on the topic of like the authorization models, because you also alluded to it in the API changes example, where you were saying before, like if you don't needed to add something to the model, it was harder because you need to change the code in many places. How easy right now is it to like add something to the model or add a feature? You mentioned part about the block, but that was just a model thing. But in terms of what if it needs a new tuple or like it needs another header for context, something like this. How would that go? Would you work with all the teams to start sending that header and then update your API wrapper to include that and then use the latest model in that case?
Yeah, in that most extreme case, it would be 3 changes plus 1 for every consumer. So like if we needed to add a new mandatory piece of context, it would be 1 change for the model, 1 change for the wrapper API, 1 change for all of the consumers, and then another change to like lock it in on the wrapper API to make it mandatory. That's something that I've been toying around with in my head of like, can we auto-generate something with that? Well, actually, it would be more changes too, because we would also have to change like the event bus handlers to start writing new tuples or something like that. Another thing that, sorry, is not mentioned in this presentation, but is more of a recent development since I wrote it. There's an admin endpoint in our wrapper API that's basically fix this user or fix this organization. And it like queries the sources of truth and then writes and deletes all the tuples necessary. So it's like a data sync fix endpoint. And as we've added new tuples to our authorization model. We just kind of hit that endpoint with everybody to backfill it, which is pretty straightforward and easy, even if it takes a lot of time to run. That's something that I don't know of a better way to do. So that's what we got.
To be fair, that's one of the harder things to do, like both data reconciliation and fixing previous data. Like we've definitely, like, you're not the first to encounter this problem. We still don't have a good answer for it, both as a team and I guess as an industry. But hopefully, as we have more and more folks working with this, we have more and more ideas and maybe more and more contributions on what that thing could look like in a way that's would be kind of abstract and would work to all the for all the consumers. One more thing. We kept you talking for too long. Oh, I don't know if it's Stephen or Stefan, so I'm just saying Stephen, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Has one more question for you, Jeremy. Yeah. For everyone, if you need to talk to Jeremy on the CNCF Slack or find him over the interwebs, also. One question, not question, one note I had is around that hierarchical relations, because it's very interesting what you're doing, and honestly it makes a lot of sense. It does increase the scope of tuples, but as a future proofing concept, it's honestly very smart. We did have also some ideas, like, and that's maybe for you, Daniel, around like maybe at some point we'd have a thing where in the DSL we can say, for this particular relation, if it's written, then its duplicate should also be considered as if it's true. So that way, when we are querying, we would consider the inverse to be true. That said, this has not gone through discussions with the core team and like OpenFGA and how much work it would require the core team. There
You
was
mean
some
like
thoughts.
implicit, right? So as
Yeah,
opposed to explicit.
like they would add some annotation to the model that would persist so that OpenFGA can understand, like, okay, if you write organization A is the parent of organization B, it's implicit or is already is taken into account. So the inverse, which is so the user does not have to write two tuples. Of course, you're using transactions here, so but like transactions, as Jeremy said, like they just double the size of the tuples, so you have automatically double the tuples. So we're not experimenting. That would be too far. We're ideating still on some ideas like this, and yeah, the more, like, honestly, the more people share use cases like this, and like the more, not we're just incentivized, like we get, not just us, like all of us together would work on what would work and something, and we'd come up with things that might work that might make things help like better for more people. I know I've asked too many questions, so I'll stop. Maybe I'll do what Stephen is gonna do and reach out to you on Slack and ask the rest of my questions.
Please, yeah, I got all the time in the world, and yeah, very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Again, thanks a lot to Headspace and to Jeremy specifically for both for this really in-depth presentation and for like he's been constantly around the community in CNCF and like asking questions and sharing his feedback. So, and I know you've been talking to Andreas, so thanks a lot. And for everyone else, like, yeah, more presentations like these, even around your explorations, your questions are very valuable, not just to us as the maintainers, but to the rest of the community in terms of ideating over solutions or what works in your use case. So just before we end, just quick community news. I mean, the biggest one we already said, we're in incubation now. Yay. But if you happen to be still, because it's happening right now. So if you happen to be where is this? Somewhere in the US, Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta.
You might find Jose and Tyler there from our team. So say hi. If more likely you're not, you're missed out on some good talks with them. This is the reminder, like Carla, who's also on our team, has made an OpenFGA, a Spanish version of OpenFGA on LinkedIn Learning. So try it out, give her feedback. We have 2 new adopters on the platform mesh and distill.ai. And this is just a reminder for everyone. If you're using OpenFGA, please add yourself to this project with your use case. It helps, as you've seen, it helps in getting to incubation, and later it'll help us get to beyond, but it also helps connect. Like now, if you have questions, you have a reference list of companies who are using OpenFGA in production that you might be able to reach out to and discuss how they solve particular problems. Just a quickly follow up on our roadmap. Again, you've seen a lot of changes in the SDK. We've cleared a lot of the things that were lagging, I will say. We wanted to share a bit about that, but we'll share next month about like some of the changes we made in the SDKs. But especially having Anurag and Jonathan on board, they're helping us kind of streamline a lot of the pending issues. The biggest one coming up is batch check has been a long time, but with the last one being solved, which is .NET, so that should clear it. And we have added stream list object support for Python a while back. We're now adding it to all the rest of the SDKs. A small note about stream list objects is it's generally helpful. So the way we're exposing it is you will be able to stream the responses into your application. So it's not that the SDK will call the endpoint and then give you a array as a response. You will be able to use streams and like consume the results as they come in. We would love to know one, if that's useful for you, like, and if you try it, if you get like better response time and things like this. We are considering maybe in the future we'd have also the list objects underneath the hood use the streamed variant and just give you the array. Not sure if that's gonna cause a much improved performance, but again, we'd love your input. The core team, as always, their focus has been on performance the past few months, and like I hope it shows. And like, please do share any perceived performance changes you've seen over the last couple of months. They'd love to hear your feedback, whether good or bad. And they're still going to continue in that. Like, you've seen a lot of performance improvements in check. They're working on performance improvements for list objects. Next, like roughly next, I guess. One of the things we've realized is we want to add a raw method for the SDKs, because we did not like that we've spent some time to support things like batch check, that we want you, so if we're taking time to support a method, to be able to call that method without waiting for us to support it. And the idea is you can use all the internals of the SDK that includes telemetry, includes rate limit handling and error handling and retries and the auth token exchange, to call these methods that the SDK doesn't yet support, but the API supports. It also helps you if you're on an old SDK version and can't update for one reason or another. I know, Osman, you had an issue with like an old dependency on the .NET, so maybe in future version of .NET we upgrade and you can't upgrade. You'll still be able to call newer endpoints, even if you can't upgrade. We have a bunch more. So that's our roadmap. As always, thank you first, and then also help us gain visibility, have everyone you know start a project, and share their feedback about it. Join the community. I know we show LinkedIn and X here, but can't understate how valuable the CNCF channel is, and the GitHub discussions. GitHub discussions are better in terms of and like issues are better for search and discoverability, but CNCF is, the Slack is amazing for having async discussions. That is it. Thank you so much. We're out of time, but thank you for all the questions. And Jeremy, again, thanks a lot for your demo. It was it's a lot like it's what we love to see.
Thank you for the code. It's great. Awesome using it.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.